there's just these magical moments. Yeah, oh, I'll see a cloud in the sky, and it's shaped a certain way. Like my mom collected giraffes, and one day I looked in the clouds and I've always liked to do it and see what I can see, shapes and stuff. And I thought, that looks like a giraffe. And I said to my daughter, if you look right here, can you see this giraffe? And she looked and she said, yeah, I can see it. I said, my mom collected giraffes. She must have sent us this giraffe. How fun is that? And there's so much more happiness to this type of thinking and mindset in terms of living the fullest life. And the more you can do that, and the more you can talk to people like yourself and find out more, I think it's a beautiful thing and a healing thing.
Welcome to the Light the Day podcast, where we explore spiritually transformative experiences. I'm your host, Julie Clough. And as always, I want to remind you to like, subscribe, share. That helps us get a message out about spirit and love and peace and all the good things that happen in life. Today, I'm super excited to introduce you to my guest, Lori Nancy. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Julie. Good to see you.
It's so fun to have you here. We met online and we've become friends since then. So,
Yeah. Ever since then, I'm like, I don't know. Of course, I'm going to recognize you, but it just feels like I kind of know you. It's very weird. But yeah, I love
isn't
it.
that so interesting?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself before we go back into your story.
All right. So I live in the DMV, which East Coast, if you know what the DMV is. And I am a hair and makeup artist here. And I have a set of twins that are in high school, married,
Wow.
and have a small dog that likes to bark at everything that passes by in the wind. I am originally from Southeast Idaho, though, so I'm a transplant here. And so I came here for my career to basically save myself. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we're going to go back into your story. So, I know your story involves some, religious trauma, which I think is such an important topic. It's something that I have studied and something that I feel passionate about bringing awareness to because it's something that a lot of people aren't aware of and may even be experiencing and aren't aware of it. I imagine that was maybe part of your process too, was not even being aware of that until you were, right?
Mhm.
So let's go back. Like growing up, did you grow up in a religious home, in a spiritual home? What was life like when you were growing up?
Yeah. It started in New England originally. So we kind of zigzagged here. But my parents were religious. I was actually adopted. I was adopted into a family as an infant that were established full-fledged Mormon, or
Okay.
LDS, or however you want to say it. And so, yeah, it was church every Sunday. It was a lot of restrictions, a lot of um, guidelines, rules. Didn't notice it as much as a little one, like a child, but you start to notice those things, I think more around baptism time. Yeah,
Yeah.
that there's things that you have to do in a certain order. There's
Mm.
kind of, you're asked if you're ready, and the answer is yes. There is no. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So as a young person, middle school, teenager, what was your feelings about your religious or your spiritual leanings? Did you feel connected to the religious teachings that you were being taught during that time, or did it feel uncomfortable then?
Well, I think to answer your question, in New England, I was quite young and a lot of things were happening, a lot of traumatic things to me at church, at the church house, like we talked about before. And I think that there was trauma there, and I kept it to myself. In those years in New England, there was a lot of that. I always felt like as a child, even into that baptismal age of 8, and kind of going into 9, 10 years old, I'll be honest with you, I I would have feelings about things when I would listen to people at church. I would have feelings that what I'm hearing isn't right. What
Mm,
I'm hearing doesn't make sense. I don't believe in what they're saying. I'm
interesting.
going through the motions, but this isn't me and this doesn't feel right. And what these people are saying is, I saw it as a kid. I'm like, this is just weird. This is controlling. This isn't who I am. I knew I believed in that I was a spiritual person, but I, as even as a kid and then even as a young teenager, I just was a rebel. I didn't want to do that organized religion kind of stand up and give me speeches and have me take a sacrament and have me be here at this time, this responsibility, no free agency, because I'm a little free spirited. I realized I'm a lot of free spirited. I wanted to try out life, you
Yeah.
know? And I think that I think that I went a long time in my life kind of feeling that way. And yeah, it was a journey. It was a journey out of it before I actually exited out of it in a permanent fashion to where people knew I wasn't participating and I wasn't there.
Mm,
And I would have feelings about things. Like I could look at a person and get a good take or a good feel on whether or not they were somebody that I would want to approach or not. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Or
Yeah.
be around. Like I could sense like bad or evil
Yeah.
around me. I still can. Um,
Yeah. You have a strong gut sense, a strong
yeah,
intuition.
and yeah, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, which I'm really happy about, because I think it's very life changing. I feel much more whole as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes when there's authority figures in a spiritual sense, sometimes that can usurp our personal intuition and we can start to not trust our own instincts and kind of give our power away.
Hmm.
I've seen that in myself over the years when I've done that, and I've also had experiences where I, stood up for myself. But there's, yeah, it's just a really interesting, an interesting dynamic when, and I find it fascinating because so for years and years and years. Psychologists, people in the field of studying, the way our mind works and our psyche works, and they
Hmm.
always related religion and spirituality as the same thing. They were almost synonymous.
Hmm.
And I find that so interesting, and I think that speaks to an older paradigm where in order to be spiritual, you have to be connected to religion. But it sounds to me like you are already kind of making that distinction at an early age.
Yeah, at a really early age, I I remember just like random things that haven't left my mind. Um, just waking up early in the morning and not hearing an audible voice, not hearing things. This is years ago. This is in
Mm,
Southeast Idaho, and being kind of half asleep but half awake in that mode about 4 a.m. I'll never forget it because I documented it. And I remember like hearing a voice in my head. And you can hear spiritual positive messages. You can also hear messages that are unnecessary
and destructive
and
even.
destructive, because where there's good, there's bad. Where there's spirituality that's positive, I am sure there's there's that connection that people that maybe aren't feeling so, wanting to show you beautiful things or connect with you and bring you to a higher power, are destructive. And I remember saying, kind of in my head, I feel like you're gossiping.
Mm,
And I don't know why you're telling me this information. It was kind of like, have you ever thought about this, this, and this?
mm,
And I did think about it at that moment. And I remember saying in my head, and what's your point? And there was no answer. And that was the end of it. But I sat up in bed. I was like, wow. I was married to husband number one at the time. I said, I have to tell you something. It's the weirdest thing ever. This is what happened. I called my friend across the street. She was one of my best friends. And I said, I have to tell you because I have to document this. I don't know what this is. And later on, maybe a few years later, and I won't go into the depth of it because it's someone's personal past. But let's just say it was about somebody and it was gossip and it was something that would have been given to me as information that could have destroyed that person's reputation and hurt them and hurt many, many people in the family. And that information was given to me. And how I knew it was because I was standing around some family members and I said, hey, did you ever hear about X, Y, and Z? And they said, shh,
mm.
immediately. And I thought, wow. And they said, come into the hallway. They said, who told you that? Who told you about that?
Oh, wow.
Said, I can't explain it to you. And they said, it had to have been, there's only this many people that know. Which one was it? It couldn't have been these people, they've passed away. And I said, nobody told me. I said, trust me, I just knew it. And they were just blown. They looked like they saw a ghost.
So I'm curious how you look at that. Does it feel like you were given information as a warning, as a, be aware of this? Um,
No, I feel like it was definitely the unkind part of maybe spiritual forces or energy, or I don't know what you would even call it, but it felt like God.
Interesting, because
Yeah.
as I'm listening, I'm thinking, because I definitely have had experiences where I've been warned of certain people or things, and not from a, I mean, my experience with spirit has been any time that it's, like a positive, like always having that intention that I'm connecting with a with a high vibration, high energy being. Um, and it's never delivered in a way of like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, listen, type thing. It's more of a, okay, be aware of this, be aware of this, be aware of this, or, um, just like it's always delivered in calm and peace and that kind of thing. So when I hear what you're saying, it feels a little bit like that, but it sounds to me like you felt like you were receiving information that you shouldn't have been receiving.
It was more of it was a calm. and it was a male voice, and it was, again, not audible, just in my
Yeah.
being, in my mind. And it started off with, you're not so different. You know that? You're not that different. Have
Mm,
you ever thought about this? And
mm,
it was kind of a calm voice with a message of information that would have never helped me in my life, but it
mm,
would have destroyed people had I had bursts of anger, which I did
yeah.
later on. There were
Yeah.
several opportunities where it was on the tip of my tongue to say those things
Yeah.
because I knew how it would be explosive because of the retaliation of me leaving the church. Those
Yeah.
moments being judged, saying, "Oh, really? Well, what about this?" And I
Yeah.
never did it. I had restraint. And I always felt it's almost like Star Wars in a way. It's like, you've got Darth Vader here and he wants you to come to the dark side. And then you've got, Yoda over here. And
Mhm.
I followed Yoda and I said, yeah, I'm going to go to no, I'm going to be with Luke Skywalker over here. We're not going there. And I know that's a really strange example, but it definitely was the only time anything had ever, happened in terms of just recognizing like a lot of light in somebody, just
Yeah.
their countenance and the way they talk and look, and just feeling connected to someone I meet or a total stranger, but also just kind of knowing when, just getting subtle hints that maybe I'm not in the right place right now. This doesn't feel good, or
Yeah.
like signs, cool
Right.
signs from
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Well, you hinted at some things that happened at the church that were harmful to you. Um, without going into detail that you don't want to share, can you maybe share a little bit about how that impacted you or what the result of that was? I'm not sure what I'm asking, but maybe maybe you know.
I could help you. Yeah. I was, as a young girl, I'll use the terminology we use on the U of tubes, right? Essay, I guess we
Okay.
would say,
Yeah.
at 4 years old at a church house,
Wow.
outside of a church house building, with someone who was probably about 17 years old and was serving the sacrament. And this just kind of was a repetitive thing that went on somehow oddly, um, not just with him, but with other people that were in the church. And it
Wow.
seemed like I was never safe to be alone, but I was always in situations where somehow I was alone. And this is before they kind of, I think, had a lot of issues and problems and lawsuits where they decided, oh, there better be a bunch of people in one room at a time with kids. Back
Mhm.
then, it was different. It was, trust everybody. But I think that it made me disconnect from church at that
Yeah.
age because I could not focus on primary songs, on the lessons. All I could think about was, how am I going to survive? What's going to happen today when we go to church?
Mm. Wow.
And it went on it got all the way through middle school before it stopped, because when we moved to Idaho, that's when it finally stopped. But I had a very close family member that I knew that if I told that he was doing what he was doing to me every summer when we went out to Utah, that it would prevent my mom from having one of the most precious and important relationships in her life. So I never said a word because I knew what would happen. She'd probably never see that person again.
Oh, wow.
And so again, I was going through the motions of going to church and just not taking in. I never read the Book of Mormon. I wasn't paying attention. I was in survival mode. And
Okay.
that just kind of carried on. And I'll be honest, that carried on until I never ever, I guess I never believed it. I
Yeah.
never, I never felt trust with anyone, anything they were saying in the buildings and the messages. And a lot of it didn't seem right. And it didn't seem like the, it seemed very organized, too organized. My brain doesn't work that way.
Hmm.
I go a lot on my feelings and
Hmm.
signs and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you have a creative nature, that shows in the profession that you chose and the things that the areas in which you've been successful is all about creativity. And so, of course, like the organized, do it this way, line up and so forth isn't going to resonate on so many different levels. But that is just, first of all, I'm just so sorry because that's just a lot for a young girl to deal with, um, it's just massively confusing and harming.
And it takes a toll on your physical health and your confidence.
Yeah,
Um, it instills fear, you
yeah,
know, you have trouble, you become withdrawn
yeah, for
and
sure.
you become a loner. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious how this affected because a lot of times people grow up in religion and that's where they discover their spirituality. So I'm just curious, like, how that affected your spiritual development. Like, did you feel like you had any connection to the spiritual? You obviously had very heightened senses.
Yeah.
And that a lot of times comes with trauma is having those heightened senses because we've got to be more aware. We've got to be paying more attention than the average person because we're in survival mode.
And maybe we're pushing ourselves up out of it and into another level, a different sphere or a different mental area of our brain that's a survival mode and then actually an exit out of all of it and into a brightness that helps you kind of carve a path. Um, but I know that one of my biggest fears in life that I have started to slowly overcome the inevitable is death.
Hmm.
That's been hard on me. I hate saying that to you, of all people, but
Oh, it's
that's
okay.
always been a fear of mine. And so my experience with my mother and her death, although it was traumatic, I've had more connections with my mom and my dad than I ever thought I would since they've passed away.
Wow.
It's amazing to me what I'll hear in my head and my thoughts or I don't want to use the word promptings.
Yeah.
It's more of a message. It's more like a conversation. It's more like it's it's hard to describe, but I can share the experience of even what happened, with my mother,
Yeah,
um, if you'd like. And
for sure.
one thing about it is, because that is a topic that's always been something scary to me since I've been a kid, and I think a lot of people have a fear of it. And
Hmm.
if you're not in a Mormon church anymore, where uh, you've left the eternal life, eternal marriage, eternal kind of that whole message, and you've become more of a spiritual person, you would never be looking into the protocol of what would be going on when someone passes away, right?
Hmm.
And I remember that my mom had passed away, and at that time, we hadn't had the viewing or anything yet. And I woke, it was like I was having a dream, but I didn't feel scared. I, I was looking down on my mother and everything was white. It was a gurney and there was a lot of metal. It looked very much like you might see in a hospital room setting, but not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it My mom was laying there and she was covered with a sheet. And I remembered that they had taken a needle and almost like a catheter type situation and put it into my mom's thigh. And I said, huh, well, why are they doing that? And it was like I was talking and I felt like she could hear me, but she wasn't saying anything. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, oh, well, that's interesting. And I wasn't scared.
Mm-hmm.
It was bright in there in that room. It wasn't a scary room. It was white and bright and everything was fine. And and it was like she wanted me to oversee what was happening. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that was to help me to know that she was okay and
Mm-hmm.
share this part of my journey with me, but I never knew why. And I had never studied or spoken to anyone. But I asked the funeral director when I went back to get, there was it was either a video or a cassette of the funeral, a recording
Mm-hmm.
of the talks and stuff. And I said, um, I have a question for you, and it's a really strange one. I was a lot younger then, and I explained to him, kind of what I said. And he said, Lori, he said, we do put a catheter up into the thigh area a lot of the times. That's one of the places. And that's where that's kind of like how they inject I guess, formaldehyde. That's how they do, like, that's part of the embalming process, preserve the body for the funeral. And I
Interesting.
mean, I was just floored because I, yeah, I was just floored. I was like, wow, mom, thank you. I was like, thank you for showing me that,
Yeah.
for showing me what was happening because I didn't know. And all I could do was talk to her and say, Mom, I just hope they do your makeup right and
Mhm.
that your hat and that when I see you, you look like you. And when I saw her, she was about the most alive person that passed away that I've ever seen.
Wow.
She looked exactly as she did in life before she ever got sick. I don't know how that happened because I've been to that funeral home before and
Right.
known the people and seen them. And
Yeah.
every circumstance is different, but it was like it was like I was getting what I was asking for, but it wasn't in the same way that you would
Yeah.
in organized religion. It was a
Yeah.
conversation. It's just a different level of communication.
Huh. I feel like your mom communicated so much in that dream because she was giving you, like the way you described it, she was giving you this peaceful experience with the frightening aspects of death. She was communicating that she can communicate with you, that she is still around, that she is still a part of your life, that she is still very connected to you. There's just so many beautiful aspects of her giving you that. And then the proof, that this unusual thing that you saw, and then asking later, hey, does this ever happen? And then getting that answer, yeah, that's how we do this process. And wow, that must have been just such a wow moment.
It was a wow moment because then after that, I realized I could pretty much talk to my mom whenever I wanted to.
Hmm.
And I have had some nights where I've needed comfort. I just, you're just drowning in the tears for whatever reason. And a lot of people pray to a lot of different people in this world. God, um, whoever they choose to pray to, or maybe they don't. But I find that when I want comfort, I talk to my parents
Yeah.
and I'll say, please take me out of this pain and take me where you are and give me a release of this and bring me up from this dark place. And I will tell you, I am not kidding you. After that, I don't remember what happened.
Mm,
I'm asleep within 10 seconds of saying it or less. Then I wake up the next day and I
wow.
feel great.
Yeah. Yeah, I have found that that is such a beautiful bridge for people, is when they have that connection with someone in spirit that they feel comfortable talking to. It's just such a beautiful bridge to this to heaven, spirit realm, whatever you want to call it. Like we have a lot of different names for it. Um, but it's a beautiful connection. And I think that we sometimes overlook that connection, or we think in some traditions it's even frowned upon to connect with our loved ones in that way. But I find it hugely healing for everyone I know that makes that connection. And I've seen it over and over, especially in the work that I do now. But that's remarkable.
And and also too, I want to remind the viewers that when I spoke about the person that kind of whispered in my ear things that they shouldn't have about the person that I loved the most in my life, they weren't giving me ammunition that I would ever use. And I don't know why they thought they would. But it
Yeah,
even made me closer to my mom because I know that she knows I never did.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Well, and then you mentioned your dad. Did your dad pass before your mom?
He actually, it was a shock because he was a dialysis patient and he had high blood pressure, and they were going to go on a Mormon mission to Greece. And they actually had to turn around. His eye went bloodshot, and they did testing and said, your kidneys are failing.
Mm,
And they had the tickets already. And so they said, well, before we start dialysis, let's go over and see his home country. And so they went, and to this day, I have a picture of them in a grove of olive trees at the sunset, and the sun is shining on them. And they went together and had that experience, and then came back. But my mom, her cancer was very unexpected and sudden and terminal, and it was a very short period of time. I was around 26, not even 20, not quite 27 when she passed away. That's young.
yeah.
Um, and my dad lived for a couple of years after that. He had a back surgery and died during the rehab portion of that
Mm,
in a really strange way, um, a really strange and bizarre way. And that was unfortunate. So they only had a few years in between them. And
wow.
a lot. I'm into fragrance. I collect fragrance. If you look here and everywhere, and being into makeup and beauty, I've had my dad tell me on a few occasions when I'm talking about fragrance and things, and I'll say it in my YouTube video. I'll say my dad was a really cool cat. And I almost want to say he wants you to know that because he is telling me he's happy and he's telling me, he's like, I was a cool cat. I had some cool suits. I had some great cologne. I was just about as cool as you could be. And he likes to tell me that and remind me of that. and it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, this is a message I would like to send. Being able to talk to my parents on another level, I am closer now with my dad than I was in life
Mm, yeah.
because we weren't as close as I was to my mom. We weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, at times I felt like maybe he didn't approve of me or, you know, different things like that, closer to other siblings and that type of thing. But he has let me know on so many levels, I could get emotional about it. But he definitely has gone above and beyond to tell me.
That's amazing. Can you think of one or two instances where you've felt that?
Yeah, I have been in situations before when I was in Idaho and after he passed away that were just totally destructive. I mean, I had left, I'd stopped going to church. I was doing all the things. I wanted to try wine. I wanted to smoke a cigarette. I wanted to, experience all the things. It was part of my grieving and then departure kind of reconstruction of whatever it was.
Yeah.
I just remember just being very alienated, feeling very alone from family, receiving a lot of cruel emails and phone calls, degrading me to the highest level to the point where I found myself with such a headache that I can't describe it. I've never had one since, but I got in a bath of cold water. And I remember saying to my dad, help me out of this. Please help me out of this. Take this out of my head, Dad. Please help me. I'm in so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'm not hearing him say it, but I'm feeling the pressure come off of my head. I'm feeling the release of the pain. And I'm feeling the sun is coming through the bathroom window
Wow.
and just feeling relief. And someone was with me at the time and they said, do you need to go to the hospital? Because I'd been crying so hard. That's what initiated it. Because you
Mm-hmm.
can do that. You can just be so distraught that you can give yourself a massive and and uh and there's just these magical moments. Yeah, oh, I'll see a cloud in the sky, and it's shaped a certain way. Like my mom collected giraffes, and one day I looked in the clouds and I've always liked to do it and see what I could see, shapes and stuff. And I thought, that looks like a giraffe. And I said to my daughter, if you look right here, can you see this giraffe right here? And she looked and she said, yeah, I can see it. I said, yeah. I said, my mom collected giraffes. She must have sent us this giraffe. How fun is that? And there's so much more happiness to this type of thinking and mindset in terms of living the fullest life. And the more you can do that and the more you can talk to people like yourself and find out more, you know, I think it's a beautiful thing and a healing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And more so than, you know, anything that I've ever been a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. I just love that so much. I don't know if you are familiar with Anita Morjani,
No.
but she had a near-death experience when she was I want to say late 20s, early 30s. She was chronic, she had cancer
Mm-hmm.
and end stage, and she died and had this experience, but she had had a really challenging, I won't go into all her story, but read Dying to Be Me because it's beautiful. But she she'd had a really challenging relationship with her father. Like her relationship with her father was really not a good one because of expectations from her culture. She was an Indian woman living in Hong Kong, going to a British school. So all these different cultural things. Her dad, her parents had arranged a marriage for her that she backed out of. So there was like a lot of stress and strain. It's reminding me a little bit, and this is the reason I'm bringing this up, is because you kind of experience the same type of thing because culturally, you were being told to line up a certain way, like Anita had been told, like, you need to live your life according to this cultural norm, which in her case was this arranged marriage and other, aspects of her life that were being lined up for her that didn't align with who she was. But at any rate, she dies, and to her surprise, she in spirit meets up with her father on the other side, and he just gives her all this love and devotion and says, go back and live your best life. And there was all of the angst from their relationship of like not lining up the way that she, was being taught or in her culture to line up. All that was gone. And her dad was just like embracing her with so much love and just go back and live your best life. And when you're sharing this with, your father and like, maybe not having as close of a relationship to him, and I imagine I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that some of that tension in your relationship might have been from your lack of devotion to his religious tradition. Would that have been a part of it, maybe?
I wonder if he sensed that I was going through the motions and kind of doing what they wanted, but I wasn't exceeding the expectations and going above and beyond to be a part of things and do some of the things the other, teenagers were doing and preparing to do. Um, I had no desire to do a lot of the things that others did. And there was a lot of comparison
Yeah.
between myself and family members that were doing that, and I wasn't. And I wanted to go do what I'm doing now, and that was preposterous, and all this kind of stuff. And I think he just thought, I felt like he looked down on me and thought less of me. I
Uh,
thought that I thought that as an adopted child, that maybe he wasn't on board and my mom only was, and that's what she wanted.
oh, well.
But he's let me know in all terms that no, I did want you, and you
Yeah.
are my daughter. And regardless to what he believed while he was here on the earth, walking around and going to church, um, I I honestly can say I don't feel wherever they're predicting people are, that's not where they are.
Yeah.
And I feel strongly about that. No one can convince me otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think he gets me now. And he's like, you were kind of a smart little cookie after all. You were the cool one too. You probably said you took after me. I got here too and found out it's just kind of like, yeah, spiritual connection, spirituality is where I landed,
Yeah.
not an organized religion. I get so much more joy and so many more experiences and signs, and my mind is always open to it.
Hmm. Yeah. I love spiritual exploration, whether someone chooses to stay within a religion or if it doesn't align with them, they choose to leave religion. Either way, like that spiritual exploration and feeling free to explore, to investigate the things that resonate, to, leave the rest behind if it doesn't resonate, even if like the things that I'm saying, if people are listening and the things that I'm saying doesn't resonate, that's fine, or if they do resonate, like it's just that's the way my thought process has changed is it's like just move in the direction that feels resonant and allow things to develop the way they develop and feel free to explore and to express your individual spiritual tendencies in the way that feels aligned for you. And that feels very much like where you've taken your own journey. It's just like, okay, this doesn't resonate, this doesn't align, this does. And you're just choosing your own path and your own experiences. And it's beautiful.
And once you realize that you can do that and that it's there and that it's possible, it's exhilarating because you just kind of flourish. You just kind of flourish and you're more at peace. And
Yeah.
and you feel and you feel like also that you're going to be a better friend, a better mother. If whatever it is you are, sibling, aunt, uncle, whatever you are in your life, you know, um, not only are you going to be in a happier place, you're just going to be, I think you'll come to peace with a lot of things. And I think that it's there. We're just not tuned into it.
Yeah.
And we're too distracted by other things. And so I think it could happen a lot sooner for people than they realize. They just are caught up in whatever's going on, you know? And,
Yeah.
but I think it's a very special thing. And I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, you know, you can always pray to grandma about it. You can always pray to grandpa. You can always talk to him about it, and of course, I get the look and I'm like, not out loud, in your head when you want, whenever, but I truly believe that people can do that. And I've had some really, really cool connections with complete strangers that it's just blown me away. So I think that um, there's a lot more to life. Yeah, there's a lot more to life. But I can't believe, I mean, I would love to read that book, Dying to Be Me. What a release, what a an awakening, and she came back and then she lived
Oh
or
yeah. Yeah,
tell
she
the
came
story.
back and tell the story. She's a very popular spiritual teacher. She's a beautiful human. Had the opportunity to meet her last not this past summer, but the summer before. And she's just as lovely in person as she is, on stage or on video or anywhere else. She's just really a remarkable woman who talks about her experiences and talks about her spiritual sensitivities and yeah, it's I highly recommend looking up Anita Morjani and reading that book. It's one of my favorite near-death experiences that I have read. I would love to hear, one of the questions I like to ask all my guests is what are some of the spiritual practices, daily or weekly or, in whatever way that shows up for you that you enjoy that helps you stay connected. And you've already kind of talked a lot about it, but
Yeah,
I just would love for you to just kind of share a little bit about that.
I think that I don't really have a regimen, which is very typical of me. I'm a little more, okay, today I need this, or today I'd like to connect, or I'd like to look for this, or, you know, um, you can tell by your mood that this is maybe what you need or where you need to go. And so sometimes it could be as simple as filling the tub full of water and bath bombs with a bunch of candles and just laying there and closing your eyes and listening to relaxing music that you use to kind of meditate. Um, Sometimes it's definitely reading books is inspiring to me and uplifting, like what you've just mentioned. Um, and yeah, prayer, prayer is something that, and I know that every religion has a different way of praying. And I'm sure you and I even have a different way. But I still believe in that aspect. And I still believe in kind of journaling.
Yeah.
I still believe in journaling. I find it therapeutic and writing down my feelings and and I guess you could say not marking, but what's the word I'm looking for? But having them set in stone, kind of like the day I wanted to document. That's the word. I want to document different thoughts I have or feelings. I enjoy doing that. Um, and I also like nature,
Yeah.
walking out in the woods. You can get some interesting feelings walking in different places. That happened to me when I got off of a train and landed in Scotland. I was so stressed, so upset. I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown in London. I thought, what am I doing here? This place is just crazy. I've got these bags, my feet hurt, I'm lost. I want to go home. This was just a few years ago. And I got on that train and I felt relief. But when I stepped off of the train, the wind blew in my face and it was almost like a cleansing feeling. Everything was wiped away, all the sadness, all the stress, all the I want to go home. And it's like, here you are in the land of of peace and contentment. Who would know that Scotland would be that for me? And it was for a
Mhm.
solid week. I walked around in just this absolute state of just serenity.
Beautiful. You know what I'm noticing in the stories and the experiences that you've shared with us today is how tuned in you are to what you're feeling, and like you're noticing the nuances. You're noticing the little things that kind of pull your heart forward, like the wind, just feeling that, like you're tuned in to how you're feeling, and you're sensing that change that happened when you felt that wind on your face and you felt that kind of cleansing breeze. And that's just wonderful.
Yeah,
Share a little bit about how people can get a hold of you, Lori.
great. I would love to do that. So I have a YouTube channel and it's at Chats with Lori. At Chats with Lori because expect the unexpected, because I talk about something different every time and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And, I've got my deconstruction still of some things in life. And we talk a little bit about that and it helps a lot of people that can relate. Try to have some humor in there, some lighter days, some funnier experiences. But it's fun. Yeah. Um, and I'm not on Facebook. I don't do Twitter or TikTok or any of those things. YouTube is my main thing. I'm slightly obsessed with YouTube. And so yeah, at Chats with Lori. And that's just where they can find me. And I would love for anybody that wants to come over and hear me talk and babble and share the fragrance of the day and sometimes do a little makeup while I talk about all kinds of things. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, so chats with Lori. We'll have the link in the show notes. Any last minute thing you want to share with us before we go?
Well, Julie, I just love you. I
I
hold you in
love you
high
too.
regard. And ever since we met the first time, I just felt like I know her. Like, I know her. Sometimes
Yeah,
I feel that way. Like, I knew you. I know you. And so I love that. And so I'm very comfortable talking to you. And probably everyone says that about you. And you
that's
make
very
it,
kind.
and you probably make everyone feel like they're the only one. But I love you for that. And thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I just really appreciate you sharing your story. That's one of the things I noticed when I came across your YouTube channel initially, was just how real and raw you are, like just how, you know, authentic. And I just love that. You're just authentically you, and that's a wonderful thing to be.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a huge compliment. I really do. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.